Welcome to the Supplier Diversity and Inclusion mini podcast series by Fips Consulting. In this mini podcast series, I'll be talking to international guests who will be sharing their experience on supplier diversity and inclusion with me. Today, I'll be talking to Michael Tobolski, Vice President of Corporate Relations and Member Engagement from WEConnect International. Michael, so great having you.
So where are you calling from today?
Washington, D.C. in the United States. That's where our headquarters is.
Great. Thank you so much. So talking to you across the pond, I'm in Switzerland. So can you share with us who is WEConnect International? What do you do?
Thank you for that question. So we are a member-led organization that focuses on identifying, registering, and certifying women-owned businesses around the world, mostly outside of the U.S., and connecting them to buying organizations that are interested in sourcing from women-owned businesses in their global and operations around the world.
That's very interesting and I think very unique. So can you share with me when or why did actually WEConnect International start the organization, and what was the reason for that?
Sure, it's very interesting. As you probably know, supplier diversity started in the United States in the 1970s, but it took until 1997 for the corporations to start thinking about women that are not women of color. Then, in about 2007, the corporations in the U.S. started to think, well, we operate and source globally. We need someone to go out and identify and certify these women businesses on our behalf. So we came about out of our U.S. partner, WeBank, the Women's Business Enterprise National Council, to do just that. So we officially started in 2009, focusing at first in just the UK and Canada markets, and now we're certifying women businesses in over 55 countries around the world.
Welcome to the Supplier Diversity and Inclusion mini podcast series by Fips Consulting. In this mini podcast series, I'll be talking to international guests who will be sharing their experience on supplier diversity and inclusion with me. Today, I'm talking to Michael Tobolski, Vice President of Corporate Relations and Member Engagement from WEConnect International. Wow. So there was actually an organization called WeBank that is, or it's still there, and that is kind of your counterpart in the U.S. So that's the organization that does certification for women-owned businesses in the U.S. And then WEConnect International was built for women-owned businesses outside of the U.S. Correct?
That's correct. And our main goal and objective is to really empower women through gender-inclusive sourcing. As you are aware, there are many opportunities where women are just not even considered to be part of the solution. So it's really about bias, both conscious and unconscious, and understanding that women can be viable suppliers to the supply chain. And the neat thing about this work, and assuming that they are competitive in quality, service, and price, this is not a handout, that if you bring in a woman-owned business, they tend to give back more to their communities. So it's a great impact piece as well as finding the best suppliers. And just so you know, there are conscious decisions made by buyers all the time, but also unconscious. We heard from a woman business in Asia that if she tells the male buyers she's women-owned, they won't buy from her. So you think about all the types of obstacles that exist. So one of the best practices a lot of our members now have is that they include any time an RFP goes out, there has to be at least one diverse supplier included in the bid process, or the headquarters has to sign off on it. So I think that's one of the key best practices, and not only making sure that the people within the buying organization know how important this is to the bottom line, but yet they are looking and practicing, objectivity when they look to include diverse suppliers, and in our case, women-owned businesses.
Right. So it's actually like an expansion from diversity and inclusion within the workplace where you make sure that you have enough women, for example, in your management or in your top as top leaders. And here it's really to make sure that you're not just supporting one woman with providing being a management position, but actually really making sure that you also include underrepresented groups, and in this case, women in your supply chain.
Yes, and there's a perception that this is just something that is only active in the United States, which is not true. Just like HR diversity, there's a corporate policy. Most, if not all, corporations have an HR diversity and inclusion policy. It also has to be included in their supply chain diversity and inclusion around the world. So that is really one of the key things in terms of the governance piece to making sure that companies that are truly inclusive have it in all aspects of their business.
Right. And especially since many companies actually spend a lot of money in their supply chain and they make sure they have diverse teams and diverse leadership, but not really looking at their supply chain. So can you tell me, how do you actually identify and find the women-owned businesses to connect with?
So one of the ways that we primarily rely on is our members. We work with them to identify women businesses that are already in their supply chain that they are not aware of and that may not be part of our network. So that is one of the things we work together to collaborate. And when they identify the women businesses, we can bring them into our system to get registered and hopefully certified. And I did want to share a little bit more information on that. We do two primary things. We certify the women businesses, validating that they're at least 51% owned, managed, and controlled by one or more women, which is the gold standard. But we also have the ability for women businesses to register with us for free at no cost. We do ask that they're at least 51% owned, managed, and controlled and sign off on that, but they can become part of our network and connect with women businesses around the world. Right now we have over 19,000 women businesses in our global network. So it's a great opportunity to participate in that. The other thing that we do is we work with other women's business organizations and reach out to our contacts and organizations, other NGOs, to see what we can do to collaborate and pool our resources, because our members have a $3 billion purchasing power and an opportunity. So it's really beneficial for women businesses to be part of that network because they can come face to face with the decision makers in those large member buying organizations. And as of today, we have over 180 global corporate members that work with us. And this includes the World Bank, the IMF, the IDB. We have half of the Fortune 50 companies as members of WEConnect International, so there's a lot of buying power and opportunity, and these companies are all committed to sourcing from women businesses. Last year, in our latest report, we show that they spent over $7 billion with women businesses outside of the U.S., which is pretty significant and almost double what it was the previous year. So we're on a great trajectory with bringing awareness to the corporations and finding viable suppliers that can be competitive.
Perfect. Thank you so much for sharing that. So it's really any company which is led and managed and controlled to a majority from a woman or several women, highly recommended to at least self-register for WEConnect International to be found by one of these 180 plus corporate members that you work with or that are keen to work with women-owned businesses. So how do you actually get to these 180 plus corporate members? How do you get them to become a member of WEConnect International?
Well, I think a lot of it is through awareness and sometimes positive peer pressure. Since the United States started Supplier Diversity and they have global value chains, they work through what we call Tier 2, is where they look to include their prime suppliers as part of this effort as well. So it's not only what a company will buy, but what their supply chain buys. So it's really getting support from their entire supply chain, I think, is really important. And as we travel around the world and we meet with different organizations in those countries, we do a lot of education and training and creating awareness, because this is all about the bottom line. This is a nice thing to do, yes, but it's not the important part. The important part, it's about growing your business and your brand in those developing countries where the middle classes are definitely growing. So we do partner with different government organizations to help create that awareness. I was just in last November, we were in Bangladesh and India doing training classes, both to educate women businesses about doing business with corporations, but also training corporations about buying from women. So I think it's going to be an ongoing education process for the next foreseeable future.
Well, we wish we wouldn't need that, but it's great to have such an organization. So if I'm working in a corporate and I want to work or become and have access to WEConnect International's database of these great women-owned businesses, but also work with WEConnect International, become a member, how does that work? So Can you share some details about that?
Sure. So we have 3 different types of membership. So you can join in one country, one region, or be global. And part of the membership, and again, it's really a community of corporations as a member-led organization. We're here to help support with best practices, strategy, implementation, development, whatever your needs are as you're a corporation looking to start or grow your program beyond the U.S. and in markets like Europe. We're there to help you with those tools and resources. So yes, part of it is having access to a database of women businesses, but it's so much more than that. Just regular networking events, matchmakers. One of our main deliverables is connecting the buyers with the sellers. So we do this through not only our network, but we have events, as I mentioned, conferences where we do look to bring the buyers and the sellers together. And I wanted to mention specifically in Europe, we have 10 countries right now where we certify women businesses. And we have registered in many more, probably all of the countries in Europe, we have registered women businesses. But currently we're working in Belgium, France, Germany, Ireland, Italy, the Netherlands, Poland, Switzerland, Turkey, and the UK. And we're hoping to add, we just recently added Italy and Poland. So we're looking to continue growing our efforts there.
Great. And I assume you also work with local organizations in these countries to actually make sure that the visibility of WEConnect International and to corporates that buying from women-owned businesses is an extension and a holistic view of their internal D&I efforts.
Absolutely. And we look to collaborate wherever we can with other partner organizations as well, because it's not just the women, it's all the diverse groups that we need to really focus on, those that have been historically underutilized.
Right. So what are the main drivers then, next to what we already heard, to continue at WEConnect International?
I think it's about having an impact. Ultimately, we measure spend in, whether it's the euros, the dollars, the percentage, but really it's are these women businesses benefiting by these opportunities? Are they growing their business? Are they being able to hire more staff? Have they been able to give back more to their communities? And I think that's really one of the key focus areas for us, is to educate corporations, especially on that impact that's possible through doing this work. Again, they have to be competitive in quality, service, and price, but the side benefit of that is that you have this wonderful impact that happens in those communities, especially in developing countries.
Right. So it's not giving away a business just because it's a women-owned supplier, but it's actually about inclusion and making sure that everyone has the same opportunities to participate and then showcase their products and services.
Yes, and not only about finding the best suppliers that are competitive, but one of the benefits of doing this is around retention and recruiting of talent. There have been studies done recently that show that it's really important, especially since there's a shortage of professional talent around the world. The young people especially want to work for companies that are doing great work in diversity, sustainability, etc. So this is another tie-in to the bottom line.
Right. So that's another thing you can stand out compared to maybe your competitors and have such a great diversity and inclusion program, not just internally, but also in the supply chain. So maybe, quickly to the backside. So I'm sure there are lots of challenges that you face as well. And maybe, organizations or also women-owned businesses, which might not be in support of being labeled as such. Do you have any experience with that, and how do you actually handle these challenges?
Well, from the corporate side, I think that there's a perception, again, that this is just something you have to do in the United States and it doesn't apply anywhere else, which, again, is not true. I think that once companies realize that they can put these opportunities out for bid and find the best suppliers, they'll have a positive impact. There's a perception, again, that, these diverse suppliers and women businesses aren't capable, or they're not going to be as competent or can't deliver, which is not true. Based on that $7 billion that I mentioned earlier, those were all competitively based women businesses that were doing a great job, and that's why they got the business. So I think a lot of it has to do with bias from the buyer's standpoint and from the senior executives to make sure that there's buy-in at the top of the organization. I think that's probably the most important part, is education. And then on the women business side, I think there's a perception, and keep in mind, we focus on B2B women businesses that are already in business, doing business with corporations that are ready to grow to the next level. So we're not looking at micro businesses or startups. So from that standpoint, it's educating the women businesses in certain markets like Europe. There's a lot of women businesses that believe that there is already parity. But when you really drill down, you find out that there isn't, and there is still discrimination against women, even in Europe. So we have on our website a 9-minute video we did with bias, both conscious and unconscious, in supply chains, that I just invite the listeners to visit some point, that they can hear. We have a woman business, one from every continent, talk about discrimination and how they've been discriminated against by male and female buyers and what corporations are doing to mitigate that bias. So I think there's education needed on both sides.
Right, and very interesting and highly recommended to check this out. Also, lots of more information and success stories shared on WEConnect International website. So before we come to the end, I want to ask you, do you have any signature events that you can recommend or anything not to miss in 2023 for women-owned or diverse-owned businesses overall?
Well, a couple of things. One is on our website, we have an events calendar, and it's a global events calendar, so you can check out what we have going on. We constantly do webinars. We do workshops. We have our European conference coming up in July, which I think is already sold out, but there might be a waiting list available. But that's a great place to look to see what's happening. Next week, we're doing our annual global gala and symposium that is focused on best practices, May 4th in Washington, D.C. And then I also wanted to mention that we have WEConnect Academy, which is a learning management system that was recently launched that gives access to women-owned businesses around the world for both certified and registered women businesses to learn how to do business with corporations, access to capacity development, financial literacy, etc. So it's another thing that someone can take advantage of.
Very good. Thank you so much. So self-registering is free at WEConnect International. If you get certified, you get the women-owned logo as a women-owned business, obviously, and you get access to all the cool training material on the WEConnect Academy. And obviously also getting all the advantages of getting connected to all these great corporates in your organization, which are keen to work with women-owned businesses. Do you want to share one last thought that you have that you would like to share with the audience?
Yes, I think it's really important for all of us to examine our biases. We all have them, and to be conscious, because there can be such a tremendous impact in the world by just including women businesses in your buying opportunities. So I think that's one of the key areas for all of us as a world to think about and make sure we're inclusive in making all our decisions around buying.
Great last thought, and I think it's very important to be aware about the bias, and as you said, it's conscious and unconscious, but as long as you are conscious about them, it makes things much easier. So, Michael, thank you so much for sharing your valuable insights. And if you want to know more about WEConnect International, or if you want to make your supply chain more inclusive, then reach out via fipsconsulting.com or check out Fips Consulting on LinkedIn and contact me there. Listen in to my next episodes where I talk to more experts about supplier diversity and inclusion and the impact it has on their company. And if you have any inputs or topics around supplier diversity and inclusion you want me to talk about, send me a message as well. Thanks much for listening, and bye, Diverse Owned.